Hello. Hi, this is Isadora. I am a one of the associate marriage family therapists here at Cache Valley Counseling, and I am just going to be recording the Max group that is scheduled for November 22nd early. I'm actually recording it ahead of time instead of being live as it normally would be, just because of the Thanksgiving holiday, and it's the day before Thanksgiving, so people might be traveling and things, and just to make sure people don't miss it. I decided to record ahead of time, and just so everyone will have access to the topic for today and be able to look at that whenever they want. So yeah, for today we're going to quickly just discuss. It's not going to be a very long one. We're going to quickly just discuss attachment theory and what that is and how it impacts us as humans, and also impacts us in therapy. So here at Cache Valley Counseling, our main therapeutic model that we work out of is emotionally focused therapy, which is created by Sue Johnson. And one of the foundations of that model is attachment theory, which is just this idea that we as human beings are social creatures that need one another and to survive and to thrive and to have mentally healthy lives and relationships and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what attachment theory is, and how we can be aware of our own attachment experiences and attachment needs and attachment styles, and kind of go from there. So just kind of as a basic understanding, attachment is this idea that as human beings, every single one of us have a need to attach or connect to other human beings. And this starts in infancy when we're born, and we have an immediate need to attach to our primary caregivers, our parents, whomever that might be. And not only is this something that we do psychologically just because we need relationships, but it's a biological need. It is a biological reflex or innate kind of instinct to connect with other human beings, and it keeps us alive, right? Because human infants are some of the most helpless and vulnerable creatures out there. A lot of if you look at the animal kingdom, a lot of other babies are born with some level of independence, right? Like how a little baby sea turtle is born on a beach and is by itself and crawls into the ocean and it's doing its own thing, right? So there's a lot of differences in how dependent babies are on their caregivers, and the more and mammals typically have more of that need for connection and togetherness than some other creatures do, but humans especially, this is a thing that we do. And so when when a baby needs anything, right, when it needs food, when it needs to be changed, when it needs sleep, when it needs safety, all these things, it will feel discomfort. It will feel discomfort or pain when it needs these things. And that triggers this reflex or this instinct to cry out and get the attention of their caregivers so that their needs will be met. Right, because if babies didn't cry, then we wouldn't know how, like, that they needed things, that they needed something, and we wouldn't be nearly as good at attending to them and meeting their needs. And so that is a survival instinct of needing to get the attention and the care of your caregivers, which babies do in this natural way. But anyway, so attachment theory is this idea that the way that we as human beings the way that we were responded to by our caregivers, how responsive our caregivers were to us when we were little in attending to our needs, both physically and emotionally, and psychologically, that all of that has an impact in our overall mental health and relational health as we grow into adulthood. And specifically in attachment theory is categorized into these different attachment styles that describe, how we developed depending on, again, how well we were or how receptive our parents or caregivers were to us when we were little. So I'm going to go over these attachment styles and what each one looks like or means. And so the first one is the healthiest one is a secure attachment style. And so essentially what that means is that when you were a baby, and you cried, your parents were responsive to you. They came and they attended to you. They tried to soothe you. They tried to meet your needs, whatever that looked like. Is that if that was food, if that was sleep, if that was, again, getting your diaper changed, or whatever that was, they were trying to be consistent and responsive to you in such a way that subconsciously that teaches the child that their needs will be met, essentially, right? That when we need something, when we're in pain, when we're in discomfort, when we're in distress, our needs will be met because our parents met those needs. They were responsive to us. And so therefore the world itself is a safe place where needs will be met. And that is the subconscious kind of understanding that happens when a child is responded to consistently and warmly and lovingly, right? And what this allows us to do as we grow up with a secure attachment style is that we can connect to people and feel secure more, for the most part in relationships. And that because we feel like there's a safe base at home, there's a safe place where our needs are going to be met, where we're loved. And so we can go out into the world and try new things and take risks and do it confidently because we feel like our needs will be met, right? And so that's a secure attachment style. And then the other three are insecure, but they are insecure in different ways. So the first of the insecures, and all of them essentially come out of the opposite of a secure attachment style, which is when parents or caregivers are not responsive, or at least not consistently responsive to our needs when we were children. And maybe that means we were left alone to cry or fend for ourselves for long periods of time, or maybe there was, abuse or neglect in serious ways. And obviously there's a range of severity to this, but in general, we did not grow up with the understanding and the subconscious integration of this idea that the world will meet our needs, or that anyone's going to meet our needs, because those needs were not always met, right? So that's where kind of these insecure attachment styles come from, is when parents or caregivers are not consistently responsive to us as children. And so the first of these styles is an anxious attachment style. So someone with an anxious attachment style essentially is usually a pursuer in relationships, and also clings strongly to relationships. They feel like they have to do everything they can to keep a relationship close. And if they don't, that it won't be there anymore because it wasn't always there when they were younger, right? And so there's this fear of like, I have to do all the things, I have to pursue, I have to, control sometimes, and to make sure that I don't lose these relationships, that I'm not alone, that people don't leave me. And so there's, different behaviors that come along with that, that show, anxious behaviors and, indicate an anxious attachment style. So that's one of them. The next one is an avoidant attachment style. So avoidant attachment style is kind of the exact opposite of anxious, in the sense that it's still insecure, it's still unhealthy, but instead of clinging to relationships out of a fear of losing them, what happens is, because they fear of losing relationships or fear of being hurt in relationships, they don't even want to risk that. And so they choose to avoid connection, avoid closeness, avoid emotional intimacy with people. And again, this is all often on the level of the subconscious. It's not like this person is saying, I don't want to be hurt, so I'm going to choose not to do this. And maybe they are, but a lot of times it's just the way that they're reacting and responding is, I don't trust being close because these people could hurt me, or they could let me down, or they could disappear, and they're going to be inconsistent. So I'm going to not even let that be a risk. I'm not going to let that happen. So I'm going to avoid, and I'm going to be independent and alone and not risk being hurt, right? And so that's kind of generally the mindset of an avoidant attachment style. And then the last one is what we call a disorganized or ambivalent attachment style. And it's typically the worst one because it includes essentially both anxious and avoidant behaviors in this attachment style, where and it's usually happens when, more often than not, intense neglect or abuse has occurred in infancy. And so someone with an ambivalent or disorganized attachment style essentially just has both of those things, where they can be really clingy and really desperate, or pursuing of relationships, but then also flip and then suddenly be very avoidant, very sabotaging, very like shutting down and running away. And so both of these things happen, and there isn't even a consistent pattern there, because there were, again, no consistency or a lot of abuse in childhood and things like that. So anyway, those are the kind of the four styles that tend to happen, that have, attachment theory talks about. However, I want to emphasize that even though we might have a general attachment style because of, again, our caregivers and how we grew up, attachment styles can even be different within certain relationships. So if you have a relationship that is really, really healthy and safe, you might be able to be secure in that relationship, even if you have a generally anxious attachment style, or maybe the opposite. Maybe you're generally secure, but then you go through, a romantic relationship that's really abusive, and therefore you become anxious or avoidant in that context, or in future, romantic context or something like that, because of a traumatic or difficult experience. So different things, different experiences can affect your attachment overall. And again, your general attachment can be different from your attachment in specific relationships, your attachment in romantic relationships or parental relationships, or different things like that. But in general, it's just speaking to this idea of how safe, how secure do you feel, and that directly translating to how, you behave, and whether or not you feel like the relationship is in danger or threatened, or if your needs are going to be met, and whether you feel like secure in that in that space, and if you can ask for things that you need and expect that those things are going to be met, and things like that. So anyway, that's just kind of a bit of an overview, and just kind of emphasizing again that if someone does have an insecure attachment style, of any of those three kinds, or a really difficult abusive childhood, that doesn't mean that they're doomed to failure in all of their relationships as an adult. Change is possible, growth is possible, of course it is, through therapy and through different things, or potentially having really good positive relationships that counteract the damage that was done earlier in life. Like there are things that can be done to help improve, but that doesn't mean that these things aren't there and that they don't affect us from the beginning, and that we have to, should ideally be aware of them, and if we can become aware of what our attachment styles are, what our attachment needs are, and strive to find ways to fulfill those things, or to get into healthier relationships, or to ask for things that we need. I think it's always, in my opinion, it's always helpful to know oneself and to learn about oneself and how we handle, situations in life. And so, if learning what attachment style you have, it will give you more insight to know how to recognize patterns and how you behave and react in relationships, then, I think that can be very empowering. There's lots of resources online, including, attachment-based, like attachment style quizzes or tests, where you go on and you answer questions about how you behave and act and think in different relationships. And it essentially will tell you, okay, it seems like you have a secure attachment style, or an anxious, attachment style, or whatever that looks like. And doing that can, help you to have a little more clarity of like, okay, this is what's going on. How do I therefore go and work to improve on whatever my situation or my attachment style is, and be able to achieve the health and relationships that I really want to achieve, if that makes sense. So anyway, that's a little bit of that overview. Again, in EFT, in emotionally focused therapy, we this is kind of a base foundation that we're working out of, and understanding that we want partners, especially couples or romantic partners, or whoever, really, whatever relationship is coming in. The idea is that we want the partners to be able to be secure, attachment figures for each other, a place of security, a place of safety. And that's kind of what we're working towards creating in EFT, right? So yeah, just that's a little bit of insight on kind of some of the work we do here and where that comes from. And, potentially if you want to figure out your attachment style and how it impacts your life and what you can do about it, there's lots of resources online to do that as well. So yeah, there we go. That's just a little bit of an overview. That's all really going to do or cover for this Max group. And again, I'm sorry that we couldn't do it in a more live, collaborative way with participants and respondents and question and answer and all those sorts of things. But because of the holiday, this seemed like potentially the best idea. So yeah, anyway, have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday to anyone who watches this, and hope this was helpful. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. Have a good night.